I'd like to introduce our guest for the evening, James from Peakway Software and their upcoming game, Isles of Adalar. Isles of Adalar is an upcoming fantasy RPG from Peakway Software, set to launch in the summer of 2020. At launch, it will feature an open world, deep RPG mechanics, first and third person perspective options, co-op multiplayer support, full mod support, complete with an integrated content editor, and Steam Workshop support to download and share content. Now this sounds to me like a pretty ambitious project for a team the size of Peakway Software, which if I understand correctly is a 3-person team. But if the last few years have shown us anything, it's that small teams of dedicated people can achieve great things, and we're about to learn a ton more about it. We have James with us, one of the founders of Peakway Software. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. It's a blast.
Right on, yeah, it's great to talk to you. So,
I've been following you guys for a little while, and when I first started watching you guys, you're like 12,000, and now you're getting up and up. And I've been doing lots of research trying to find people who are interested in this type of thing, and so we started reaching out. And this is, I think, the first official, the first like interview of like podcast, like as far as English speaking stuff. But yeah, really exciting. Really happy to be here.
Oh, right on. Yeah, well, glad to be here. Glad to hear you're sort of a follower of our content. That's exciting.
I'm really excited about this project because it's something that I have been watching for a little while here, and it's great to see that so much work has gone into this. And the fact that you guys are openly embracing mods straight out of the gate, I think is one of the more brilliant ideas.
So first question I wanted to ask you, James, what role do you actually play on the team that's developing this game? And how did you, what made you decide to start developing this game? What led to it getting started, and to put so much into this project?
All right, so origin story time. I think I'll actually start with my other co-founder, since he kind of technically started the company. He's a lot older than I am. He worked in the industry on some, I guess, like smaller. He worked professionally in the industry as a programmer, and then left the industry to do more commercial stuff because of, it's pretty everyone kind of knows about how you get treated when you work with games. He worked on, they weren't like huge titles. I think the biggest one was like an MMO. It was like Fallout inspired. Well, I think it was called After Earth or Fallen Earth. It was like a Fallout style MMO. And then he worked on Dinotopia before he kind of went over to commercial stuff. So it wasn't like massive industry experience, right? So he got to a point where he was doing really well, and he actually had a family member die that left him an inheritance. And so between that and then what he had from, just saving up money in general, he thought, okay, well, I want to make games, but I want to make my own games and not work for another company and kind of get screwed over all the time. So it's just kind of weird that my little sister played soccer with his daughters, and that's how we met. And at the time when we met, I was still in college, and I was going in for learning, game development. And so we kind of just were talking in general about what we like, what we don't like. But then when I actually ended up getting done with college, that's when we actually started officially working together. And so for me, I was the type of person who, when I got done with my schoolwork, I was constantly trying to learn extra stuff and just get as good as I could at so many different things. And so that's where we get into my actual role. Is I'm really just a generalist. And so whatever we need that we don't have, I go out and try to learn it to the best of my ability and do it. So he does the programming, and I guess he's mostly a tech and tools guy. And then the gameplay was stuff that we've been learning as we go, because that's not what his specialty was. And so I've been helping him design the systems, and we've been going back and forth and testing them. So, I technically do QA. I do some art stuff, like when we buy assets and stuff, I will work on their textures and try to make everything fit together. I do animation work, although, some people have pointed out animation is not our strong suit in some of the points in the trailer, and I totally understand that. But it's a lot of the stuff that when I animate, I do them just to get the feature functional, not to try and make something finished, because we just don't have the time for me to spend one animation a day or something. But so for example, like our characters have like over 400 animations on them for the player character. So if I spent too much time working on animations, literally nothing else would get done. But I also do all of our concept art. Well, I don't want the promotional art. I cut the videos. basically everything that's not the code itself, I have my hands in. So I'll work on shaders as well. And that's through visual, it's like scripting, not code. Because I haven't got to the code part yet. Just working on all sorts of other things. But long story short, I'm a generalist.
Okay.
So we started working together, and when we actually started, we founded the new name in March of 2015, I think. Or is March or May, but that actually isn't when we started working together, because we had a different name at the time, and then we just ended up changing it. But we started actually trying to do like an old school kind of isometric turn-based game, basically just like Divinity Original Sin, because that was what he liked, and so that's what he wanted to make. And so I just kind of jumped on that and was working on that with him. But we didn't know Divinity Original Sin existed, and so when we saw it, we were like, yeah, there's no way we can compete with this. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of discouraged us, because they have a level editor as well, but it's separate from the game. At least I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's separate from the game. But yeah,
it's like semi-separate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was kind of like, okay, well, I think we worked for maybe 3 months together at that point, because he had worked on it for about a year. His the old school turn-based version, and I was working from the 3 months, and we saw that, and we were like, okay, well, this is probably not a good path to keep going down. And so he didn't know what to do. And I was like, well, my personal favorite games were the Bethesda games in that style. So I was like, well, let's just go with that formula, but then make the changes that we like to fit our personal preferences, and then have the level editor and stuff in it. So that's when that section of the game started. And so in total, by the time December rolls around, it'll be about 4.5 years that we've been trying to make a game together. And then this is kind of what we're showing after that group of time. And for a while, it was just me and him. But then we eventually got someone else helping us out, who was one of my friends. And we've had a little bit of contract work here and there, but right now we're 3 developers. And we plan to be that way for at least a little bit longer, unless we get some extra money through crowdfunding, which I guess we'll talk about later, and then maybe get some more. But
yeah, for a first effort, this looks pretty impressive, and especially for the size of team that you have.
Well, that's part of the we definitely try to follow the work smart, not hard. Well, I mean, we work smart and hard, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But part of what we're doing is, when we build our tools for the level editor, is because we're so small, it actually forces us to innovate on how productive the tools themselves are. I haven't used Creation Kit myself, but from what I've gathered online, it's not exactly the most user-friendly software to use.
We discovered that the hard way.
Oh yeah.
When we dove into making Fallout mods a while back, and our big Fallout mod was like a year behind schedule. But anyway, that's another story.
Well, go ahead. Schedules never work out. We've learned that ourselves. It's funny how we now even assume it's like, okay, well, this is how long we think it will take. Let's double that, and then it still takes longer. It's just, you just gotta keep going, right? But so the thing is, we are forced to find ways to make it work with the small team. And so that all that work will get passed on to the users. So it'll be really easy for them to pick up and make things and be productive, because it had to work for us.
That's really interesting.
For the small team.
So the modding team or the modding tools and the building tools that we see,
they're one and the same. Yeah,
they're so those tools that you're going to be providing, just sort of integrated into the game, those are the tools that you actually use to build the game.
To build the game itself,
and that you developed as a tool to build the game. That is really cool.
Yeah, and so that's part of this reason why it's taken us so long to get to this point. We did read a comment where someone was like, wow, 3.5 years and this is all they got. And I was like, but there's tech we're building. It's not just the game. And that tech is going to carry us into future games as we build up on it.
As a personal, you can't listen to comments like that. I mean, especially for
I find that usually, even when you get the really kind of, I would say, cancerous comments, there's usually some sort of truth there. It's just being blown out of proportion, or it's not being properly identified. And so I look at that stuff and I try to figure out what's actually going on instead of just completely dismissing it. But it's like I said, I have pretty thick skin, so I can handle that no problem.
Well, that's good. Because honestly, when I watched through the trailer, I was like, 3 people built this in only 3.5 years? Now, granted, I'm not a developer, so I can't. Yeah. I can't. I don't have a. I don't have a measure.
Sorry, I misspoke. 4.5.
Oh, 4.5.
The specific comment was, we had a green light video, and then this was 3.5 years from that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's one thing is if you look on our channel, you actually see there's a bunch of really old videos. And I specifically have not deleted any of our old stuff so people can see that we've been working at this for a long time. And they can actually see where we started and how bad we were in the beginning and where we are now and see the difference. Yeah, I encourage people to actually go check out how shitty we
Yeah.
But
makes us look less shitty now.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Saib?
No, I'm just like, yes, that is it's good when anybody can like look at what they've done before and go, yeah, see how much I've improved or see how much I've changed. That goes a really long way.
Now, just sort of touching on what you said, like we've talked very recently about some of the limitations that occur when you're working, with a very small team or a very small budget, because we talked about this in the context of Greedfall, because we've recently covered Greedfall fairly extensively. And that was made by a 20. What was it now?
It was like 20 or 30.
20 to 30
like that,
people,
right?
somewhere in there. I think it was 32-ish.
$5 million budget. I heard. I might
and
not
even
be
that game,
accurate.
Even that game has some serious limitations as far as technical things. The animations are a little jittery. The facial animations look kind of funny. There's a few points where during cutscenes it just cuts to black and then cuts back in, and like a character who supposedly ran off is just not there, and so they just didn't animate that part for whatever reason, probably like you were saying, lack of time. And so in a sense, I feel like for me personally, I'm willing to look past some of that when I know I'm dealing with a game that is from a small team and built on a very small budget, but just of people who have good ideas, are dedicated to making really good designs, and a really well made game that's has a good story and innovative gameplay, that kind of thing. And so yeah, it's I think
I can piggyback that a little bit. So I think part of what's important about what we do is try to first figure out what you can do, and realistically, right? And honestly, to be completely honest, we probably shouldn't have tried to make something this big our first time, right? But that's part of this whole 4.5 year process is of trying to do something, failing, and then trying to figure out why we failed and keep going. I mean, 4.5 years is a long time, and we're still got a long way to go. But it's part of it's about strategy, right? It's like, okay, we know we can do this. Now let's stay within that. Stay in that lane. Like, don't say, okay, we have this type of system. Now let's try to make it, just as good as X other system, because that's the best one. It's like, okay, well, let's get something functional, and then we try to reach out to people who are interested in the genre, but like you said, can handle a little bit of the jank. And then what you also have to make sure is you price the game accordingly, right? Don't try to be more than what you really are. And so we know, like, so for example, Skyrim has sold over 30 million copies. Like, we know that we are not at a polished enough level to come out and just blow away 30 million copies as far as sales. Like, but we know that there are a lot of people who want what we're trying to make, and then a segment of that group is okay with some of the jank and dealing with some of the not super polished things, but just enjoying the overall game design and then the systems that are in place, right? And so that's what we're really trying to get the attention of right now. We're not really trying to blow the whole world away. We're saying, hey, we're working on a thing and we think it's coming along pretty good, and it's this type of thing that we like. We think you'll probably like it too. And then just try to establish that rapport and then get those people's attention. And then over time, keep getting better and better and better and trying to get the more kind of global attention.
Well, it sounds like you've got a pretty realistic and healthy outlook on things, so that's really good to hear. That'll contribute to your success as a developer, and I mean, if this game turns out like what I think you're envisioning, I think it could be a really great addition to sort of the RPG genre, and not just the single-player RPG genre, but the multiplayer RPG genre. So let's talk about that for a second. So you built
the non-existent multiplayer RPG genre.
Well,
which is kind of I mean, to an extent, right? But that's kind of the whole point. I mean, what you classify as, like an MMO, I wouldn't classify that as the same as what we're doing.
I was thinking more along the lines of Anthem, and I guess you could argue whether or not that game actually does exist or not. But
see what you did there.
Yeah. So anyway, so you built this to have integrated multiplayer support.
Yes.
And were you inspired
optional,
by
the way, just to make that clear
optional?
for people.
Yeah, optional multiplayer support, but it's co-op. So I believe I read on your website that it'll be up to 4 players that can connect in, and you can adventure together. That sounds really good. Were you inspired by some of like the Skyrim Online mods, or Skyrim Together, whatever that mod's called that lets you play Skyrim multiplayer?
So I didn't really find out about that until we had already been working for like a few years. Actually, let me just go back a little bit. Personal preference. My favorite game of all time is Morrowind. I think it's probably pretty evident in our game, the influence from that. And then my number 2 is probably Fallout New Vegas, but I've always wanted to play that style of game just with like a friend, and I play that with my friends, and then we just watch each other play. And I was like, man, if we could just run around in this together, that would be, that was always, ever since I was like 12 years old, I've wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And so what's funny is I'm figuring out now why it doesn't exist, because there's a lot of technical like things you have to get over. But we're getting there one step at a time.
Just a few.
So you really did take on an ambitious project, but
Yeah, and I know it's like, it sounds so stupid when you look back. It's like, what are you thinking, right? But the tools have improved and become open to the public way more than they ever have been. And I guess I didn't want to work on something I wasn't interested in, so I was just like, fuck it, we're going for it. Because if you don't try, it'll never happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I
didn't want to get stuck making like really small games forever and then never really doing enough to do good enough to get to the point where I wanted to be in terms of like development level.
I can appreciate that. I can definitely appreciate that, and I've been known to bite off more than I can chew before. And so
it's just the healthy type of ambition, not the let's grow every year to insane amounts. It's just, hey, I want to try to make something really good,
Right. But as long as you can, accept some of the limitations that you have, which it sounds like you are. I know that would be difficult.
Begrudgingly.
Yes, well, I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah, that doesn't work when you make games.
It doesn't work when you do most things. And when getting into YouTube and also some of the other stuff that I'm working on in my writing career, I have some large projects underway, and I was just talking to my editor a couple days ago and saying, this is progressing ridiculously slowly. I don't know if I need more patience or if I need to be less of a perfectionist. And it wasn't 2 seconds she texted me back, less of a perfectionist. Stop it.
Yeah.
It's not at perfectionist stage. That's why you have an editor. And yet, there's a part of me that's like, I have to make this perfect before I send it to my editor, which is dumb. But that's just how my stupid brain works.
So I've kind of learned that it's kind of like you said, the stage, right? The first stage is, hey, get the foundation. Then the perfectionist stage comes after. If you try to perfect something and you don't have the foundation of the things around it, it crumbles when you start to get to the other parts, because you've been focusing on one thing, and then you haven't built up the infrastructure for how it interacts with everything else, at least in terms of games. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now. We've got a lot of our infrastructure in, but we haven't got to that perfectionist, super polish everything stage.
Right. And you are aiming for a release in summer of 2020, so you have some time. Do you think, is that the stage you're at? Like, do you sort of have the story and the world set, and you're working on polish now? Or?
No, definitely not. We've got like the outline for the story and like the major factions and what their motivations are and how that relates to the other factions, and kind of we've got like a very like pulled back overview of how to complete the game from each faction's standpoint and all that stuff. And the world map I guess it's not fully fleshed out, but it is laid out in terms of where things are and where the main quests happen. And but it's not at the point where like you can jump in right now and play for 10 hours. We're still working on a lot of the core systems and getting those in place. So that extra person that we have now is working full time on the level design and like starting to set up the quests and the writing. And then the other 2 of us are still working on getting those features in. That way we can really hit the ground running, But yeah, so I guess now would probably be a good time to explain our total, I guess that's the wrong word, what we're trying to do with our long-term plan. So we are trying to do this PR and everything to build up to a crowdfunding campaign for Indiegogo. And the goal for that is to have us to be able to afford that, 8 to 9 months, and hopefully hire an extra developer and get us to like a really, really solid early access release. And I know I told Saib a while back that we were aiming for like now to be the early access release. And then we looked at what we had and we said, we wouldn't feel good if we started trying to charge money for this as if it was like a functioning product. And so we said, screw it. We're going to offer a demo for free. And that's just what we have right now. We're just offering the game that we have as it is for free in a demo form.
Oh, really?
And then we're going to try to do crowdfunding. Yeah.
So I can go download that and try it out.
Yeah. Well, not like right now, but when the crowdfunding starts, yes.
Oh, I see. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So when the crowdfunding starts, you'll be able to play it, and then you can decide at that point, like, okay, I see what they're trying to do. I see what they have, and then decide if you want to back us or not, right? And so that's the whole thing, is we talk about like the honor system. Like me and my other co-founder, we're very much like, we like to think of ourselves as very moral people, and we wouldn't want to do something, or have asked people to do something we wouldn't want to do ourselves. And so it just wasn't coming fast enough, because nothing ever does when you're trying to develop these things. Mm-hmm. And, we kind of bit the bullet and said, screw it, we'll take the risk and just try to do crowdfunding, even though we were kind of nervous about it. And we're still really nervous about it. But I mean, people seem to be responding to what we have really positively. So I'm hoping that it's going to work out.
Well, you clearly have a lot of work ahead of you, but it's looking very promising. We're definitely glad to help you in any way we can. Yep. Actually, while it's right on the screen here, I have questions about this lockpicking minigame. So are there going to be a lot of little mini games like that, or is that kind of what were you?
I'd probably say not a whole lot of mini games, if any, really at all, other than lockpicking. That was just like a core thing. It's like we know we have to have, to test lockpicking, so we can eventually get stealth in and really work on quests and stuff. But yeah, I would say it's more about, I think most of the core of the game is the combat and then the dialogue and going through quests.
Right.
And I would say that's just really a side thing, and I wouldn't expect a whole lot of stuff like that.
So is it is it actually going to depend on my skill with the mouse to pick locks, or will there be like a lock-picking skill stat that I have?
So we're not 100% sure if we're going to start. Well, actually, it's funny you're saying this. I've just recorded a video of talking about some of these things. I just haven't got the chance to post it yet. Okay. But so right now, the character progression when you level up is all tied to power-related things, as far as like character power, or endurance and health and stuff like that, and different stuff like that, like stuff that affects combat. And so we have crafting and upgrading and enchanting and stuff, but we don't actually put any restrictions on that as of right now. You just have to have the right materials in order to create the thing. And so we haven't decided if we're going to make a separate segment for just like non-combat skills, and then start segmenting off different things and requiring certain levels to different things. We're thinking that, like, for lockpicking, we might have like a perk, like, or the equivalent to like a perk, and where it just makes lockpicking easier, and then it might be more player skill based. But okay, like that's just one of those things, is part of why we want to release an early access, is see what people want the most. Because like some of the stuff, it's not like a hill we're willing to die on. Like we're not going to be like, no, absolutely no non-combat skills. Like we're not going to die on that hill, So some of the stuff is like, hey, let's just put it out there the way it is, and then see what people think, and then adjust the feedback as far as going into early access.
Well, a game like this, you're going to have a lot to balance and test out, lots of QA. Hard to do as just 3 people working on it.
Yeah, and that's part of what our potential vision and what we're looking for. Because we could have, with the systems we had now, if we had 9 months, we could take something and call it 1.0, But we want to really just put it out there and then make it better. And that's like our main goal, is just to make something that we're really proud of when we're done with it. And like right now, I mean, it might sound weird for me to say this, but I'm not like super proud of it, because like the vision that I have of potential is not met yet, right? I think of the potential of this genre and what a co-op game like this could be, and that we haven't got to that level yet. for my personal taste, at least.
Okay.
And so a lot of early access is, hey, get more funds in and then pour it back in and just see how good we can get this to get, to be. And then after we finish our early access, we will pour it to consoles, and that's the money we'll use to make our next game.
Okay. Interesting. So you got a whole game plan going forward. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh yeah, we got like a 10-year plan.
How is it? How's it gonna work? Playing multiplayer, like if I drop in with my friends, and I have. Are you joining your friend's game, or can you like kind of both merge your quests,
so I'm not like
achievements, that kind of thing?
I'm not like a huge D&D guy, but from my understanding is like if you play D&D with like a group, you don't play when someone's not there, right? I guess, are you guys into D&D and stuff like that?
A little bit.
So that was kind of my assumption, but that's how our game works. So when you start a campaign for multiplayer, the people that join with you have to be there for you to play.
Oh, okay.
And
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so you're locked in. Once you start a campaign with your friends, you are locked in, and then the game's obviously meant to be really replayable with these types of games. So it's not like, you get you play through multiple times. And so you'll have like, here's my co-op campaign with this group, and maybe I'm playing again with this group, and we're doing different things. And then here's my single player one when I do just what I want. And then with the mods, you can just say, me and my friends are going to get together and play this modder's campaign that they made. And, so that's kind of the idea. And part of the ways to kind of overcome people, because I think people get a little nervous. They're like, I'm locked in. What if what if something happens? I'm not friends with them, but I still want to play the character. It's just like, hey, don't worry about it. With the way we're setting this up, there should be plenty of content for you to play through, and it shouldn't feel like a slog to play through again or play new content with the mods and stuff. But yeah, we have to lock it down, because if not, it's just gonna break like crazy. Like you're not gonna be able to contain and account for all the different scenarios of people coming in and coming out, and with different quest items and different faction relations that they have, and it would never never be able to contain it.
Yes, well,
it'd be like Pandora's box,
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because there is a lot of technical hurdles when you're doing this sort of jump in, jump out kind of a thing. But let's talk about the mod support, because this seems to be... Was this something that you envisioned right from the... Excuse me, tripping over my tongue. Right from the beginning, when you started developing, like, we want to make a game that's highly moddable? Or was it when you realized you had these tools, and you were like, hey, we can just share these with the community and build stuff?
When I mentioned, like, my co-founder, he was a tech and a tools guy, so he did what he knew first, because he doesn't really understand. Well, okay, maybe I should rephrase that. Doing gameplay concepts is new to him, so me and him both worked together on developing the gameplay. But he knows tech and tools, so before I got involved, he just started working on tech and tools. And so when I saw him, the first thing he showed me was mostly tools and then barely gameplay. And I was like, this is really, really cool. And then all the ideas just started going from that point.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been the foundation from the very beginning. I mean, we always knew that even if we expand to 2030, like you said, you're still going to be very limited in that content. Like even if we made a campaign that's, 100 hours, you'll play through that pretty fast in terms of this type of RPG. And so we wanted people to be able to take that and just keep going with it.
Well, that's excellent. And I think like there will be a lot of people who are interested in it just from that aspect of it being hugely moddable. I mean, how many people, there's a huge modding community for games like Skyrim, games like Fallout, and even other games that are less easily moddable. There's a lot of people that's just what they love to do, and so you make a game that's highly tailored to that's going to appeal to a big audience.
So one of my favorite games was the original Far Cry and then Far Cry 2, because those games, well, I think they still come with the level editor in now, but at that time on consoles, I played on the console back then, there was really nothing like that. And so I just saw my cousin today because we were talking about, but so me and my cousin would literally sit there and play with the level editor and create our own levels and play through them more than we played through the base game. Like that was like that the value of it is so, it's almost, like I said, almost infinite if you put the quotes around it. And so we wanted that in our game. It's just like it's something that it just adds so much. And it's a pillar for what we want to do as a company going forward with every game we make.
Well, there was a reason why Super Mario Maker is a runaway hit in the Mario community. just the idea that you can make infinite situations, infinite levels, and play them. And I'm way more of a player than a maker in that one. I just love playing basically infinite levels. And
well, it's something for everybody, right? Because if you are more creative, you get to express yourself and learn, and then potentially open up a door to a career for you. And then, if you're someone who just likes to play the games, you can sit back and follow the different projects like you see with these big mods that people follow, and then just get more stuff to play, and then you don't have to pay for it,
Yes, it's excellent. It's an excellent thing.
Well, actually, I'm not going to talk too much shit. I'm not going to go down that line. I was about to start going somewhere, but never mind.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. But how's it going to work if I mod this game? And we saw that it looks like quite a robust build editor, and we see in the trailer. I'll point it out when it pops on the screen here that you can build houses, you can build things, and it also says on your website and on your Steam page that you can make everything from just individual items and like objects in the game to fully fledged campaigns. So how's it going to work? Say I build a house like we see in the trailer, and then do I build it in a spot in the world, or do I build it separately and then can place it somewhere? And then if
well, actually, sorry, just finish your question. Then
I'm just wondering, like, say I build a house in my world, and Saib wants to put it in his world, so I upload it. It's going to have Steam Workshop support. If he downloads it, can he like place it anywhere? Is it only in that spot?
So yes.
Yeah.
So okay. Actually, let me clarify. So when you build something like a house, we're calling it a builder right now. It's basically an object made up of a bunch of other objects. And it comes with the grid, and you can change the different grid settings and stuff. So once you make that builder, you can save out the builder just as an object itself. And then, so you could literally just be like, hey, I like making houses, make 20 houses, throw that up on the Steam Workshop, and people can download your houses and put them in their levels. But then it also exists in the level that you actually created it in. But you could just open up a level just to make houses and then upload it if you want.
Okay. When you say level, what are you talking about? Are you like what is a level?
like the open world island style, like so we call it dungeon a dungeon. That's like that's basically a level that doesn't have the terrain, and then the level is the stuff with the terrain and the the typical open world stuff.
Oh, okay. So when you say level, you're talking about self-contained area.
Well, so our max size right now is 4 square kilometers. And so it's technically open world within that space. And then if you want to simulate a bigger landmass, you can put fake mountains on the end and then they have you go through a loading screen to simulate larger. But that's part of the R&D part of early access, is we want to try and work on level like streaming data and making it so we can have huge land masses. But right now we're working within that limitation right now.
Okay, so if I'm going through the world and I need to go to a different area, there will be a load zone. Is that
outside of the 4 square kilometers? Yeah.
Outside of that?
And so say if you wanted to play someone else's campaign that was on their own island, you would go to like a dock and then talk to an NPC to basically then go to a loading screen and then pop up in their world once it loads.
Okay, gotcha.
And then if you wanted to try and simulate, like I said, like a large land mass, at least with where we are right now, you could put fake mountains on the outside and then have it when you get to a point where you can then go to a load screen and then pop out on the other side, which is technically a new level.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, so it's not one seamless open world. I gotta clarify that. It's
still a basically it's like which is why you've called it the Isle of Adalar instead of the continent of Adalar. It's islands that you can chain together.
Yeah, but just all sorts of little islands. And that's kind of, and someone pointed this out in our trailer, the top comment is that Adalar in Turkish means islands or isles. So it's islands of islands or isles of isles. And that's kind of our vision for it, is that people, well, eventually there'd be so much stuff being made that it's like, oh, let me just go to a seaport and then travel to some random island and go play there, Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of our vision in general. But yeah, a level is like represented as an island. And then if you want, you can fake it to make a bigger island, but you have to go through a load screen at that point.
Okay, well, I mean that's I think that's fair for a game like this. Again, like one of those limitations, but I mean even I mean, it's only very recently that the top AAA games have kind of been able to do away with load zones, right?
And part of that is, so like we use Unity, and our version of Unity that we're currently using doesn't support that type of thing, but it looks like the new one is. And so that's why we're saying up on the horizon, we might be able to start expanding that. But that's, again, working within the limitations that you have. And I said begrudgingly, because, it's nice to say that you want to do all these things. Then we actually start, it's like, oh shit. Which is why we've waited so long. That way we know what we can actually do. And so a lot of what we're trying to say for crowdfunding is like, hey, you can expect this, but just a lot more. Like, we already have the infrastructure. We just need to keep working on it. Like, we know we've got to a point where we know we can do what we already have. Right.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing. When we first started talking back and forth, this was something I encouraged, because this is where once you get the ability to streamline the process, then you can pump stuff out, and you can just constantly add on to the kind of the base thing. Whereas, like, every time, and we see this with a certain developer where it's like, they spent 5.5 years working on a project that bombed because they didn't have the infrastructure to create multiple things at a time. They were so limited in scope and the ability to do what they wanted to do, that it just didn't work for them. And this is what you guys focus on.
I know what project you're talking about. I guess we won't name it. It's fine. But so this happens also on an indie level a lot, and it's part of the problem with where we're at right now is that other people have fucked up before us, and so it's going to make people cynical about us, even if we're the only, like, one of the only. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say one of the only ones, but if we're one of the ones doing it right, because it's easy to promise the world, and that's what I'm saying is, like, when you say something that I don't know the answer to, like with the mini games. My default answer is just assume no until otherwise. Yeah. But there are a lot of people out there, like a certain space game, where if they're asked a question that they know isn't actually implemented yet, they'll just say yes and then hope that they get to it, and then it doesn't actually happen. And then it's like, oh shit, what happened here? You said you had this. You said you were doing this. So, like, if I say yes, we already have it, or it's like up on the horizon and we know we can already do it. Not like, oh, well, now that you said that, I'm going to say yes to make you happy, or whatever, that type of, Well, and so it's really easy to say, oh, we're going to have a huge seamless world, and then you start working, and then you go, oh shit, our engine doesn't support this.
Yeah. Well,
we already said it, right?
And this is what we've run into so many times in the past, especially with regards to the how the game, one of those games that I was kind of mentioning worked is like, when we were doing our investigation into some of these companies, we constantly ran into the team leaders who would go home, play a game, then that weekend, on the weekend, then come in on Monday and say, hey, I want to do this, 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 because I played it in the game.
Yeah, right. But they don't have the infrastructure ready to do that. Because this thing is like, and people don't understand that you have to plan everything before you really start, and not everything down to the 100% detail, but at least the start. Say, okay, we know we're going to do this feature, so now we're working on, we want to do feature Y. Let's start to make feature X compatible with Y before Y exists. That way, when we get to Y, it just goes straight in and it works. Versus, oh, we worked on features X and Y, but now we're going to do Z, so now we have to go back and change feature X to account for Z. Oh wait, we forgot to change feature Y to account for Z, and then it just starts to become a clusterfuck at that point.
I'm amazed at times that games get made at all, with how complicated they are as far as software goes. But yeah, it sounds like you've definitely got a good process and plan for your first game. So that's good to hear. I'd like to turn to some questions and comments from our chat. So Time Bean says, integrated content editor, this is hella cool, tell us more. And so hopefully we've given her some of the information she is hungry for there. She also says, Warrior Kitty wants to play. Game Notes says, hello, you have...
It's not a cat. It's not a cat, guys.
It's not a cat. Apparently it's a dog.
The dog. Oh, God. It's fine. It's just funny because I never considered that. Like, I always knew that people would draw the connection to, like, the Khajiit, obviously, the elephant in the room. But I tried to do the opposite. I was like, oh, well, we'll make a dog. But then they'll understand what we're trying to do. And then now people actually think it's a cat. And I'm like, no, it's not a cat.
That's kind of funny.
That's why we were having that conversation.
Yeah,
before.
exactly.
Yeah, because I was like, no,
for me to join it now. I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, because now I'm like, damn it, now they're gonna literally think we're trying to clone it, and I'm like, well, obviously there's huge Elder Scrolls influence in here, but like I said, we're doing it to our preference. Like, we're changing the things that we think we probably could. No, I don't want to say improve, but just stuff that we like specifically. But I wanted to make the connection of like, hey, fantasy races, right? Yeah. So I was like, we were able to get this dog race. I was like, okay, that's really cool. But then if people are thinking it's a cat, then they're going to literally think we're trying to clone the game. And I'm like, that's not what we're trying to get across to people. So I'm no.
Yeah. I see the risk there. But when you have that dialogue demo in the trailer here, that character does not look like a cat to me.
Yes.
Does not look like a dog to me either. But looks more like. Looks kind of sheep or goat-like.
As long as it's not a cat.
As long as it's not a cat. All right,
just because I don't want people to think that we're literally trying to clone something. That's why. But.
So, question from Double Asterisks here, and I think the gist of this question is, if Epic comes along with an exclusivity deal for you, what will you do?
I won't respond.
Just ignore it?
Well, there's no point. So let me, I guess, so when the whole Epic thing started, I was actually pretty open to it because none of this stuff had really popped off yet. And it was just like, oh, something new's coming and they're reaching out to developers. I was like, oh, that's really cool. But, if we look at the store from like a year ago when it started, it's almost a year. In 2 months, it'll be a year. I think it was like December 10th or something like that. It hasn't really changed at all as far as functionality. And for us, that's what really is the most important thing. I mean, I know there's the whole ideological stuff behind it, but I like to dumb things down to a simple level. And the simple level is we need mod support and we need something to host mods that's directly in the storefront, which is Steam. Mind blank. Uh-oh, what's going on? Oh my God.
Yeah, no.
Damn, what's it called? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm... Oh my God. God, I know the moment I hear it, I'm going to be like, how did you actually... Workshop. There we go.
Yeah,
Steam Workshop. I don't know why. It just... That Synapse or whatever, that just wasn't firing off. It wasn't making it to its destination, but Steam Workshop. That's like a core to our game. We want people to just download mods from inside the game and then be able to have it managed in there. And they don't even have that. They don't have anything like that. And then they've deleted their roadmap. It says there's just... They don't have what we need, so we're not going there. Mm-hmm. That's just a simple answer.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, and a game like this, come to think of it, if they don't have the support for the mods and sharing content, that's just a non-starter right there.
Yeah, it's not even possible because we don't have the infrastructure like Bethesda does to have our own servers that host all this data and distribute it to people. And so that's another thing, small team limitation. But then also, I was a little bit put off by how all the conflict with the Epic Store. But I've started to, over time, I've seen like, okay, I kind of assumed that they were acting in more good faith than it seems like they really are. Over time, it's become more exposed.
Okay.
But the main thing is the technical stuff. It's just if they don't have what we need, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Another question from Time Bean. How deep can the modding go? Can you import textures or create new textures, that kind of thing?
So yes, there's different levels to it. So in the game itself, you have access to what is there, like the assets and everything that are there, and then the tools to create the actual campaigns itself. But you can actually download Unity for free because they have a free version. And you can add your own art, animations, rigs, textures, visual effects, and then you can export that as a file that the game can read and then link it in game and then upload that to the Steam Workshop so other people can just take that. So you can have brand new content outside of what we make, literally in terms of individual asset levels.
Okay, so you can get as
so it's not just what's limited
with it as you want to get.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, you could literally make. That's why in the description I say one part game, one part RPG, one part RPG maker, because you can literally make you can't make and sell an RPG and then call it something different, but like on a technical level, you could make an RPG within our game if you just added all your own stuff in.
Okay.
So yes, short answer, yes.
Right on. Some comments about how great the armor looks. That's awesome. And the question of the voiced protagonist. So it looks like the protagonist is not voiced. Some people like that. Some people are.
I think
like
the only way
it's a real hot button issue because sometimes it's either like, there's extremes to it because it's either extremely yes or extremely no from people, and it's kind of weird that it has that much like.
Well, see, so I remember when Fallout 4 was first revealed that people were actually really, really excited about that, but it was because they didn't realize the limitation that came with it because you didn't have the game in your hands yet. And so I think people like the idea of like, because it's like, I guess some people like to role play themselves saying things, but I think that's probably a minority. But I think most people
think about it. I've tried to bring this up gently in the past, but it's like you're in a room staring at a screen, whether it's a TV or a monitor, and I know people who play like this where they go, "Oh, of course I will help you with this quest, but why don't we share a bed together first?" It's like, you realize how crazy that sounds from the outside. Like,
do you, Saib?
No, I do not.
Speaking from personal experience, I see.
Yeah, well, that's the joke anyway.
But,
I'm just assuming,
but
he doesn't know about people. Anyway, go ahead.
So I do think that the people who do like the full role playing like that, I'm not trying to rag on anyone. I'm just saying I think that's a minority of the amount of people in total who play these types of games. So I think a lot of people, they see a disconnect when they hear the person talking and then they're looking at options and then they never hear themselves talk. And so I think that when we first saw the Fallout 4 protagonist, it was just like it was like removing a barrier almost. But then we realized it added a barrier of limitations in dialogue. But we didn't know that at first, right?
Okay.
And so the only way I could ever see us in any of our games in the future having a voice protagonist is if we actually had some sort of procedural voice system that was almost as good as actual voice acting. But that probably won't. Yeah, I mean, it is getting there, but that's the only way.
It's close, actually. There is a couple of tech pieces that are coming within the next 3 to 4 years. So, but the cool thing is that you'll be able to set it up to kind of just like have it so that people just add it on the fly. And then I'm sure somebody will figure out a way to integrate it with the engines, especially with like Unity and stuff like that eventually.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah, no, there's a couple that work really, really well.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've kind of already have the design in my head. It's like something I kind of want to do is like, I think I could figure this out. It's just whether or not I could have the time to figure it out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that would be the only way. It's so short answer, no. Right.
Okay. Fair enough. Double Asterisks says, just tell me Isles of Adalar is Skyrim with dog people and we'll buy it. Haha. So there you go. I think people want...
That's the thing, is like we know what we like, right?
Yeah.
And so when you see something that's kind of like something else you like, you say, hey, I think I might actually like this too.
And if we're going to go into, ripping off, games ripping off of other games as far as genres go, I mean, everybody is just ripping off of JRR Tolkien, and he, of course, just collected myths myths and legends of
different
Europe,
different cultures and stuff.
So it's there's cat people and you have dog people. Well, but Anthony Sarber points out your dog people are probably the true enemy of the Khajiit. I can say that.
I've always kind of thought, in my head, I'm sort of really secretly hoping that some of these big, massive mod teams, when they get done with their mods, will just port their assets over to our game, like just the visuals. And then people would go, oh, well, let's make a portal where you travel into Nirn. And that would be like a crossover
That
event,
would be cool,
almost.
yeah.
That would be, yeah, I mean, we can't officially do that, for obvious reasons. But that would be really cool if that ever happened one day. Or if they just put their assets for the art in, just for people to use them. Because I'm sure that would translate to a lot of the stuff for different campaigns and stuff.
And then Bethesda will send in the goons. Okay.
Well, they can't. Well, see, the thing is, they can't because they've already limited them so much that they have to build all their own assets. So they own those assets. Mm-hmm. You can't. They've made them from scratch. Bethesda can't do anything about that.
That is true.
You can't sell it. But they made that themselves. So, like, if you're talking about the art for these big projects.
Double Asterisks, by the way, says, I could tell it's a dog. So, he's either trying to flex on us, or there are some people who can definitely take, who
it's
definitely
50-50.
see it for what you intend it to be.
We gotta get those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers.
Let's see.
But no, I want to clarify. I wasn't trying to dogpile on the person who commented that. I'm just playing around and joking.
I think they get that. We do a lot of joking around. So, Niv Aussie, Khajiit versus dog people. Make it happen.
So I might as well tell you their name. Their name is Hundboren. Or Boren, sorry. I guess I didn't say it. Hundboren.
Hundboren.
So,
okay.
Yeah, Hundboren. Kind of like you think Dovahkiin is like dragon kin. Hund is like, hound. Boren is born. So, Hundboren.
And is there a particular cultural influence you went with? Like how Skyrim is very
Norse.
Very Norse in their mythology, that kind of thing.
I would say the player, I guess, for the whole game. So it's going to be weird. This is about to sound a lot like Greedfall. There is like a kind of a colonial, well, not colonial theme, but a theme of like building in, I guess, it's kind of like a colonial theme, but just not like colonial visuals, right? But part of the main overall story is people discovering a new rich island and then going there, and then the kind of blowback between the natives. But the player character races they kind of all do their own separate thing. It's not like all one theme, kind of like that Norse theme, like Skyrim.
Okay.
Which I guess, technically Skyrim, they all have their different races, but Skyrim is overwhelmingly Norse, which our game will not be. It will be more of a kind of across the board high fantasy.
Okay. Awesome. Double asterisks again. Lovers Lab will add a doggy style mod for your dog person companion in romance. Bobcats.
I'm sure they will.
Bobcat says, just imagining the dog people mostly being guards instead of thieves. If this gets popular,
actually, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're gonna have the Khajiit invasion, and the portal's gonna open.
Khajiit invasion. It'd be funny if the same people made a Skyrim mod with
where they take our stuff and throw it in there.
Yeah, you play it from the other side.
And they go together. It's two parts. You have to play the first half in our game, or their game, and then the second half in the other one.
But if this gets popular, I see the meme potential is super high. The Khajiit and your dog people.
Yeah. I guess I never thought about it all the way through like that. I was just like, we should have something like that because people like that stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of what went through it. And so if you see the character who is drinking and sitting down, that was like, okay, well, let's have something that's kind of like an elf, like something that looks more elegant, but not an elf, So
okay,
that was kind of what I was saying. I was just like, let's just get something that does the functionality that people like from that race, and then have something like that in our game. That's kind of what I was thinking. I wasn't really thinking all the way through of Cats vs. Dogs, but yeah, and that's actually part of. I guess I never fully expressed this earlier, where I'm a little afraid of people positioning us as Isles of Adalar versus Elder Scrolls 6. I'm like, please, for the love of God, let's not come out like that, because we lose every time with this people's visions of that game will be. And then Bethesda in general, it's like you don't have to pick one. It's you can like two things that are similar.
Exactly, and I mean, I don't see a ton of potential for that. I look at this, I don't look at this, and think.
Well, I guess I'm kind of worried that people who are have been feel like they've been wronged by Bethesda recently will see our game and then go, look, you see this? You see what they did with 3 people? And then, put us in an aggressive light. And then the people who are, still really standing by Bethesda because they just really like their games are going to look at us and think that that's us projecting that onto the stuff they like. And then not like us because of that,
That could happen. If that happens, I mean, there's not much you can do about it. But honestly,
I mean, we're just trying to get ahead of it and say that stuff now, and like I said, doing all the interviews and just letting people see how we are and how we feel about things.
Well, I mean, if you're in your interviews and things talking of Bethesda and the influence and inspiration they've had on your gaming career, I think you can probably get ahead of that a lot and just don't.
Well, I mean,
engage.
There'll always be some people who take it there, but I just don't want to, like, for people listening, I just want to clarify that we're not trying to replace or take down anybody.
That's fair. That's our job as the YouTubers. That's where we will go. You know, look what 3 people did. Why can't, you know, why? Millions, hundreds of millions of dollars and 100 people working on a game, and it's...
Yeah, so for those who know that I've been railing on this for a while, it's like, and again, this is one of several games where it's like these small teams of like 3, 4, and 5 people working on titles that are very, very, very again, not wanting to throw you into a confrontation, but it's it's like
it does propose some questions of what's going on behind the curtain.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
so
like
I get it.
What did 120 people do for 4 years when there's 5 skins?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there is a question to be raised there, but more specifically with us, it's like a genre war of like going more to like a specific level. But yeah, I mean, I've always thought these things myself. Is, you know, I see what we've got, and I'm like, what is going on behind the curtain with these bigger companies? You know, I do wonder, but I've never worked for any of them. So, like I said, this is our first game, and I was fresh out of college when I started this, so I really don't know what's happening out there. But, you know, I don't want to come off like a dick. You know, I know we run into our own problems. I'm sure they have their own problems of being at bigger scales and then dealing with the investors and all those things. And so I don't want to talk too much crap because I just don't know. You know, I don't like. Yeah. I also haven't earned that right. You know, I haven't even released a game.
Well, and
yet,
that is fair. You know what? That's a great statement you just made, and I think that's fair, and I respect. Yeah, like I don't think if you were talking trash about Bethesda at this point. Or anything, not that I think you would, but, you know, if you were to come out swinging and be like, look what we did, you know, I wouldn't respect that as somebody listening to that. And so I respect the respectful tone. I mean, as crappy as some of the things they have done recently are, Bethesda has earned their place in a lot of ways. And they've put the work in, they've produced.
The fact that there's
a lot of good stuff.
The fact that there's not anyone else like them until potentially us coming says it all, right? If no one else is doing what they do for a reason, because it's difficult.
Well, and Niv Ozzy puts it well here. Let the rabid gamers do that. That's our job. That's what'll happen. Yeah. Just you know, as a developer, if you make your thing and put it out there, and you know, let the community decide its value and how it compares to other things. Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, you know, I literally grew up on these games, like literally, and I'm not saying that because I'm in like a Bethesda focused community right now, but literally Morrowind and then New Vegas are like my top 2. I'm not sure which one goes where. My nostalgia tells me Morrowind, but, you know, I'm trying to be logical and I kind of want to put New Vegas up there, but my feelings can't. But, you know, we're doing this because we like it. We like that stuff. You know, we just make our personal changes and then go through our own way, branching off from that point, you know? Right. And that is the best place to be. You know, making something that you yourself love. That's the best place to be, and that produces the best work, in my opinion. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, sub, and hit that notification bell, and then check out some of these other videos. Find the link to our Discord server and other important stuff in the description below.